Hey you guys, I'm so excited. Today I am going to show you step by step. We'll do a tutorial on how to make this epoxy wood crosses. As you can see, I have two of them in here. This one has a white background. There's the hanging thingy. And then it has some lavender inside. That is lavender that I grew in my backyard. And I dried it. I'll tell you how I dried it in a second. And then this one is a black background. And then it has this maple burrs inside. Now, if you want to jump straight into the tutorial, please go to this timeline over here. But now I would like to take a moment just to show you a couple of other molds that I have from Crafted Elements and tell you how I got to make these crosses. So again, if you want to skip this little story, just go to this timeline over here. Now, here is the mold that I use for these crosses. As you can see, nice, solid, thick molds. And this is the one I will be giving away to one of you guys. It's a 12 by 6 by 1 mold. Another one that I have, it's this bigger one. I'm not sure exactly what the size of this is, but you can see the shape, it's a little bit different. It's flared here. And I really like this one. I actually have one right now going into the mold. I am making one with some light blue colors. I will insert a photo somewhere. I can't bring it here because it has to stay flat. The epoxy, I just poured it and it's still running. And then they also have this giant one. I believe this is the biggest one out of all. I have not tried it yet, but I will make sure I will do something creative with it, and maybe I will film it and share it with you guys. So how did I come up with the idea to make crosses? Well, I have a lot of these little bits and pieces and stuff from making charcuterie boards. When I resaw my wood, I end up with some really thin pieces, and I didn't know what to make with these guys. They are not big enough to make a box lid, and I felt like I don't really want to throw them out. Maybe I'll find some purpose for them. So I messaged Derek Smiley Woodworks. He has a YouTube channel and a Facebook page. And he's been my mentor when it comes to epoxy. I learned everything I know from him. So I messaged him and I said, Derek, what do I do with all these little pieces? I have so many of them. And he said, Skylar, you should make crosses. And when he said that, I thought he meant like tiny little crosses that you put on a necklace. And I've never had any desire of making jewelries. So I didn't know what to think about it. But then he sent me some photos of his crosses. And that's when I realized he meant crosses like this. So I asked him where he gets the molds from. So he said Crafted Elements. I was already familiar with Crafted Elements because I purchased a lot of their molds for my charcuterie boards. And he said when he makes crosses, they never even make it to his Etsy store. He posts a sneak peek on his Facebook saying, hey, this cross is going to be available tomorrow on my Etsy store. And they usually sell before he even gets to put them on his Etsy store. People just claim them. So if it works for him, maybe it's going to work for me too. So I bought two molds from Crafted Elements and I made two crosses. I made these two. And it was so fun to make, and that's how I came up with the idea that I should do a giveaway. So then I didn't want to give one of my molds because I need both of them. So when one project is sitting into the mold and curing, I can work with the other mold on my next project. So that way, when this one is cured, I can just plop this one in and always have a project going. So because I didn't want to give away my molds, I contacted Sean at Crafted Elements and I asked him if he would be so kind to donate a cross mold so I can do a giveaway. And he was so generous and so nice. He actually sent me a whole bunch of molds. So I have a lot of new things now to play around with and make some videos on it. But I will be giving this one away, like I said in the beginning of this video. So the first step on making these crosses is to make yourself a template. This is my template, and what I did, I just took some really cheap epoxy and poured it into the mold. And as you can see, this one, it's yellow, it has lots of bubbles in it, and it's just the cheapest epoxy I could find. I put it in the mold, let it cure, and there you go. Now I have a template, and this template will help me cut my wood pieces to the perfect size so it fits into my mold. The next step is to mix your epoxy, add in a color. Like you saw, I used white for this one. I used black for the one with the maple burr. And for this one, I use a red purplish color. So use whatever color you want for the background and pour a thin layer into the mold. Now you have two choices. You can either let the thin layer, the colored layer, to completely cure, but then you have to scratch it with some sandpaper so the next layer will stick to it. My choice was to keep an eye on it, and when it thickens enough where it's still soft but not completely cured, that's when I went to the next step. And that's what you see in this video. I'm kind of poking it with a stick just to make sure it is cured enough and it's not too runny where when I put my wood in, it just sinks to the bottom. So I want it to be thick enough, but still I want to be able to put the wood and push it in just a little bit so it sticks to it. So that's what I did with poking with a stick. I made sure I poked it somewhere on the bottom because I knew that part it was going to be covered by the wood, so I would not see it. So then I put in the pieces of wood, pushed them in just a little bit to make sure they are stuck to that epoxy. Then I mixed some clear epoxy and filled the mold, make sure the wood is all covered, and then let it cure. All right, you guys, it's been a few days and our cross is looking fantastic. There it is. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to demold these crafted elements molds. Super, super easy. I really enjoy these molds. They are super good quality. I cannot recommend them enough. So as you can see, because we use mold release on it, comes out super, super easy. And let's see what we got. So there's the mold ready for our next project. Now here is what it looks like. Remember, we had the black on the bottom. So that's our black layer. Then we had our wood layer, as you can see it, with clear epoxy. And you see these edges here. This is happening because any epoxy shrinks as it cures. So as it shrinks down, it gets these edges. So we will sand those down. And then we'll put the top coat to make this cross super, super shiny and super, super nice. So that's what I'm going to do next. And I mean, I think it looks super cute. Somebody will be really, really happy to have this. So we're gonna sand it now. Now for the sanding, I will just sand the top part. I'm gonna go with 150 grit sandpaper. No need to go any higher because we will put a flat coat and that is going to make it all smooth and shiny. But we do want to scratch the surface just to make sure that that top coat will stick to it properly. So I'm gonna go with 150 all over the top, and then I'm also gonna scratch the sides, and with my hand with some sandpaper I'll break down the edges a little bit, just like a very gentle round over. I could use my router and just put a round over, but I'm gonna do it by hand. It's a small project, so that should go pretty quick. I'm not gonna worry about the back because the back will sand after the flat coat. So let's go sand this and move to the next step. All right, our cross is all sanded, and as you can see, it looks like we pretty much ruined it, but I promise you it is not ruined. It is very much okay. I am going to remove all the dust from it because I don't want to put a top coat on top of dust. So for that, I'm going to use some isopropyl alcohol and make sure I clean all the dust. And this should dry really quickly, so we can move into the flat top coat. All right, our project is dust free. It looks very not clear, and that's okay, like I said. Now what I'm going to do is put some painter's tape on the back, and that will help me clean out the drips later on. So let's do that. And you see, when I put the painter's tape, I do leave a little edge in there because I want that shiny coat to kind of overlap, make sure I get that edge really good, and then we'll sand it later. Make sure it's stuck really well. And as you can see, I left a little bit of edge all around. So now it's time to mix our tabletop epoxy. Now, when it comes to tabletop epoxy, there are many brands out there. They pretty much work the same. They all work. It's just a matter of preference. The two that I have in my house is the Total Boat tabletop epoxy, and I also have the Super Clear tabletop epoxy. So my preference is the Super Clear just because it's a little bit thinner and less bubbles, and it's a little bit easier to work with. So that's what I will be using for this cross. So I'm going to mix my epoxy that is measured by volume 1:1. So I'm going to mix that, and then we will go and do the flat coat. So I'll see you in a bit. I want to quickly show you, I had some scrap pieces of wood and I covered them with tack tape. The epoxy will not stick to this tape, and I'm going to place this underneath my cross to elevate it. That way the tabletop can drape over it, and you know, I have it elevated above the table. So that's what this red thing is, just some scrap pieces of wood that I cover on tack tape. And of course, in the end, I forgot to film this. You have to peel off all that blue tape, and the edges are going to be kind of stuck because of the drips from the epoxy, from the tabletop epoxy. So I use a heat gun to soften that epoxy, and I was able to just peel the blue tape and sand it back. And then I attached the little hook thingies, I don't know what they're called, like hanging things. And I did not screw them in because I did not want the screw to protrude to the clear epoxy. So what I did is I used some 5-minute epoxy. I'll put a link to these hooks and the 5-minute epoxy that I use. So I use that to attach the hook, and there you go, they are done. Now I want to take a minute to thank Sean at Crafted Elements for sending all these molds to me and the one for you. And I hope this was helpful to you and you learned something new. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Skylar Ewing, and I'll see you in my next video.